And welcome to Max Black. I am so excited about this next conversation with amazing experts around achieving success in the modern C-suite. Welcome to the show, Andrea Donner, Kimberly Bannister, and Anne-Marie Otanez. Thank you for joining us today, ladies.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Now, I'm thinking right now in terms about success in the C-suite. I am thinking in this particular moment, it might even be a little bit more tenuous, particularly for people of color, right? Andrea, I'd like to start with you. Given the immediate after effects of the most recent election, what do you think is the office space like right now, and what needs to happen in order to make it feel a little bit more welcoming, perhaps?
Yes, thank you so much. The office space now, it's tense. Black women in particular have to come in with a mask on and can't talk about what their real feelings are. And as the C-suite whisperer, one of the things I've talking to my clients about is, in this space, how do you lead people who you know voted against the avatar of who you are? How do you step into those spaces and provide space for everyone? And then how do you also protect your brand? Because they are looking for us to say something or do something that will give them the opportunity to shut down our chances to move forward. And so it's a very tenuous rope that we have to walk as we step back into these offices and lead.
Oh my goodness, that sounds a little scary, Kim. For Black women who found themselves in those spaces, what do they need to do to put on that protective mask but still be themselves?
I would say it's going to be very challenging for them. One of the things that I've always mentioned is we have to leave it at the door and go in and put our best foot forward and try to not think about what has occurred, which has been devastating to a lot of women of color, as that we were expecting a different outcome, different circumstances. But it also takes us back to challenges that Black women have faced in breaking the glass ceiling and rising to levels of executives and being great leaders. So we are oftentimes challenged. So we have to figure out how to overcome, take deep breaths, think before we act, and continue to be the strong people that we are. But it definitely will be a challenge, and it definitely is scary.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
And you bring up a very important point around leadership.
Yes.
Anne-Marie, you focus on leadership. You are a leader in your company. You train other people to be leaders. What do women, and Black women in particular, in leadership positions, because in those specific spaces, there are very few, and the spotlight is on you, and so there's extra pressure associated with it. For those Black women in the C-suite, what advice would you give to them for not only navigating their career broadly, but specifically with that extra spotlight they have on them in terms of being leaders in their organizations?
I really appreciate that question because I'm the chief of staff architect, and I do spend a lot of time in the C-suite dealing with executives who they don't know how to look at us, they don't know how to speak to us, and there's this overwhelming challenge of how do you even ensure that there is a space for us to show up authentically. And I think the thing that Black women need to be aware of is they've got to balance every day, and they know how to do that well and expertly. And so leaning into that specific power, leaning into that ability to understand how you can look at the entire landscape and just juggle all the things that are coming at you, and then giving yourself an opportunity to breathe. And not forgetting that there's a reason that you're there. You are skilled, you are powerful, you are bold, you are fierce, and just own that space and don't diminish because of the things that are happening in the world today.
That is such a powerful message. Don't diminish, don't shrink, even in these very uncertain and for some people maybe even very scary times. Andrea, similarly with you, working in a very high-powered position, working in a very prestigious place, do you almost feel like sometimes in those very sort of lauded environments, the pressure is that much more because it's such a high bar in those spaces?
Oh, absolutely. When you look in these spaces, we're not there. So the few of us that are in the seats are so visible. And I'm watching executives are leaving and looking at stats where executives aren't leaving because some of them are going on to other opportunities. They are leaving because the opportunity wasn't right for them at this company and they're being exited. And so that high pressure of, especially executives who come into companies from the outside hire, they didn't grow up in some of these companies. They're only lasting 18 to 24 months
Wow.
because yes, they can say, oh, look at all these new Black executives, Hispanic executives that we've brought in, but they are not integrating them into the culture and giving them the nuances of how do you actually navigate successfully in this space and the unwritten rules. And because of that, they're not lasting and they're moving out.
Oh my God. Just to anyone, because what you hit on there is so important, and it dovetails with some research that I've seen around leadership, and particularly with Black women, and it's around this issue of when companies are in very serious situations, when there are major problems, that's when doors are opened up for opportunities where they weren't before. So people inherit very, very difficult situations. One might argue that, that's one of the things that Vice President Harris was having to navigate, having to inherit a very negative situation and try to turn it around. What advice would you give, Kim, or any of you, to Black women in spaces like that right now, where they have this extra burden of trying to clean up somebody else's mess, but at the same time, you're doing it within an environment now that might not be as welcoming as it possibly would have been a few years back?
Something that you had said earlier about us being the only, I think one of the things for me that has been really important when I talk to other Black women is the sense of community. Because you've got to find a place that you can go to so you can take off the mask, you can take everything off, be yourself, kind of dig from that well again, so you can show up. And again, you are amply, if not overqualified for the position that you're doing. And just because others don't recognize that does not mean that that's not where you need to be. And so it's just making sure that you're able to go to a space where you can be reminded if you forget, and then you can show up. Because this talk that we've been hearing recently about the type of hire Vice President Harris was, and
Yes.
you know the type of hire that she truly is.
Yes.
And just dismantling that view and distancing ourselves from that. And so I really appreciated that you said that. We may be the only, but we are the only ones that are supremely qualified.
I love it. Kim?
I agree 100%. I think that we are challenged in multiple ways. I think Kamala Harris handled it in a way that most of us should. She was the best qualified candidate for the position. However, because of extenuating circumstances, she was not selected. A lot of us deal with that daily, weekly, monthly, and we just have to be resilient, be reminded of who we are, and how we got there, and our skills and experience. Lean on that and knowing and understanding that we are the best qualified for the position, and doing as such, doing the job the best of our ability while trying to block out the noise. While it's challenging, I will say Kamala Harris handled everything exceptionally well.
Can I jump in here?
Sure,
Because I'd like to
absolutely.
add, but I'd add, we've got to stick and move. Because in this environment, you have to recognize that are you set up for success or
That is
are you
true.
set up for failure? And as the landscape has changed and people feel more emboldened as the development programs for getting executives of color up, as those start to move, you have to look at the landscape that you're operating in and how is your company shifting? Is it time to stick or is it time to move? And I think that's where we have to
Absolutely.
really
I agree with that
think
100%.
about stick and move.
That's a great
I
comment.
love that
Yeah.
idea of stick and move, because
Yes.
honestly, at the end of the day, you're responsible for your own career.
Absolutely.
Like, they're not
Yeah.
looking out for you, you have to look
No.
out for you, right?
Yep.
So what sort of advice would you give people? Like, how do you know it's time to bail, it's time to jump ship? Are there certain signs that they should be looking for?
Yeah, I think one of the ones that I'm looking for is in this moment, how is your leadership and your skip leadership interacting with you? And as we come up towards the end of the year and there's performance management, what types of signaling are you getting around your career trajectory and listen for what's said, but more importantly, listen for what's unsaid.
Yes.
Share your
Yes.
review with someone who is senior in your company who can actually tell you, like, what they didn't write in here is this is what's missing, and this is either going to help you or hurt you.
I think
that's
another
a great
thing
point.
for most people is to look at what kind of programs are now going away. When did they start, and why are they disappearing? Who is disappearing? And what does that look like, and how does it impact you? Because that's something that when I talk to individuals that I mentor and they say, I don't see this anymore. Well, let's talk about what's next for you. Let's talk about specifically what are the things that you need to do to prepare yourself. And then trust your intuition and your gut. If something feels like it's not right, it probably is not right.
Correct.
So you've got to
Absolutely.
trust yourself and not doubt.
I love it. And
Yeah.
Kim, just to wrap this up, if you do find yourself in those moments where you have looked and you've seen these signs that we've heard, and you have to make that leap, but you're scared, what advice would you give?
I would say do it scared. I would say that it's better to lean to the side of advancing your career in a more positive environment than staying where you are. I would say still do your job to the best of your ability while you're there, but continue to seek other opportunities. And if it doesn't feel right, then it's time to move.
Yep.
I love it. Stick
Yeah.
and move.
Stick
I'm
and
gonna
move.
remember that.
Me too.
It's not just the boxing. All right. So thanks for joining us so much today on Max Black, and we'll see you next time.